Hello everyone, a very warm welcome to all of you and welcome to yet another episode of CIO Gurukul webinar on navigating the CIO journey. My name is Jatinder Singh, Executive Editor and CIO Leader, and I'm delighted to be your host for today's session. Well, today's webinar provides an insightful discussion between two industry veterans. Akash ji, while we are waiting for him, he's probably stuck somewhere. He'll join shortly. Uh, but just to introduce the topic, as the technology continue to evolve at a rapid pace, CIOs are faced with multidimensional challenges and opportunities. From data transformation to cyber security, from innovation to governance, the role of CIO has never been more critical in driving organizational success. What started off as a from the dot com boom, the earlier known EDP managers, and of course, over a period of time, we have seen multiple dimensional roles. Uh, uh, all these technology leaders like you have to deal with the kind of challenges, the financial crisis, and of course, over a period of time, there were so many opportunities, so many challenges that we all have dealt with. So how exactly these things have changed and what has been the journey, the experiences? So over the next 30 to 40 minutes, uh, our today's speakers will delve into key aspects of CIO journey, offering some practical insights, strategies, and best practices to help navigate through the complexity of modern leadership. the We have with us while we are waiting for Mr. Jain Akash Jain, former CIO at Mastercard JV and Reliance Retail Finance. We also have with us Mr. Sanjay Prasad, former CIO at CESC and Tata Group's Citi Global, and a very eminent speaker at various industry forums and conferences. So they will enlighten us on the evolving role of the CIO in the digital age. With that, I would like to welcome them. Welcome Sanjay ji as of now. And we before we begin, as a friendly reminder, we would value your participation and encourage you to submit your questions to make this interaction as interactive as possible throughout the webinar using the Q&A feature. Akash and Sanjay will address as many questions as time allows during the Q&A session after the deliberation. Thank you once again for joining us today, all of you. And with that, I would formally welcome Sanjay Prasad ji and would like to start the discussion on probably if he can take us through the journey of his career and of course how things have changed over the years before we start the formal Q&A session. Sanjay ji, welcome once again.
Yeah, thank you, Jatinder. Am I audible?
Yeah, absolutely, sir.
Yeah. So thank you, Jatinder, and I I'm thankful to CIO and Leader and 9.9 for giving me this opportunity to share my experiences with the group at large. While I may be knowing quite a few of them who are actually attending the session here through your flagship event, which is the next gen CIOs, which you hold every year. And that gives us an opportunity to do a lot of reverse learning in interacting with potential leaders who are likely to become CIOs in their respective organizations and sectors. So, and having seen quite a few of them over the past few years across different sectors, I probably would be able to resonate with, my journey, which while it has been that of largely of IT and digital leadership, but it went through different phases across, uh, you know, uh, FMCG companies, then manufacturing, banking and finance, and core IT, and lastly, energy and utilities. So, while doing this, one thread comes out that as we go ahead, it is not necessarily the sector that you are currently in, uh, where you need to display your wares and make IT valuable to the organization. You also need to be aware of the adjacencies that hold good uh, and not, I mean, necessarily in your sector, of course, and then around where you can sort of imbibe applications and imbibe use cases so that you're not caught unawares as you move forward and make your organization much more competitive in today's world, because you wouldn't know from which segment and which direction actually the business may get hit, despite your having, maybe a century of legacy, positive legacy running in the organization. Things are changing too fast for us to really grapple with the situation as we move forward. So with this, Jatinder, with this brief introduction, I would sort of hand it back to you. I don't want it like a monologue, so it will be good that if we have a two-way and sometimes a three-way conversation, which will probably bring more value to the interaction.
Absolutely. So, thank you, Sanjay ji. Thank you for a brief about your experience. Since you have held senior executive roles in automotive, at Tata Motors, FMCG, at Unilever, and Colgate, of course, been in a startup as well for over a year, Citibank, and multiple other organizations like TCS, Power Group, and CESC. Could you share about the different milestone in your professional journey and how things have actually shaped for you? If you could throw some light on the learnings and challenges and opportunities that you have seen in your career and how exactly you navigated the shift, that would be great for our audience.
Yeah, and what I will not do is probably I will not take a calendar route, meaning going year by year and
Yeah.
going sequentially. I'll just bring out nuances that have come across whilst you're in an organization. I have been very lucky that I have had the opportunity to transcend different sectors at different points of time, and at the same time have been able to get s- see the white spaces, which at times was forced on you, and at times you had a chance to develop it within yourself and give it back to the organization. So uh, before I go into a few of the examples, I would like to share with the emerging CIOs that they must look for these white spaces. It may not be apparent when it hits you, or rather it will be too late if it hits you. It's best to anticipate the same and make sure that you're ready for it. And sometimes it will hit you, and then you have to be in a reactive mode and that will show your preparedness in doing your role for yourself and for the organization. So whilst I was in Hindustan Lever, and that was actually in the 90s, uh, I had you know opportunities galore to handle M&A integration, and which meant that most of the time you're actually looking at uh, integrating organizations which have been acquired. So all of you, some of you, I mean, maybe some of you will may have been too young, would have heard of the Kisan brand, ketchup, jams, and beverages. And so that was acquired. And at the same time, uh, Levers got its flagship frozen desserts business into India, and at the same time acquired Quality. Jatinder, you may probably remember Quality ice cream. Goes couple of more than 2 3 decades back. So multiple M&As, but not the same solution. So I was, in one case, it had to be a completely greenfield implementation of Lever's ERP at that point of time, and which was for the frozen desserts business. But it had its own pitfalls because frozen desserts is a perishable commodity, whilst the entire business in India at that point of time was around personal products and beverages, which is tea and coffee. So we had to really work hard to understand the supply chain and customize that ERP to make sure that we are able to extend it to a greenfield operation of frozen desserts, which is your Walls business, which is we all know today. On the other hand, Kisan business was, while the brand was big, but the business was bleeding. And so we decided to run the legacy systems that were there, and make sure that there was enough integration and interfacing with the mainline system, so that reporting and information system at the corporate level did not get affected, but at the same time, fairly robust, but legacy systems running on COBOL were continued to run, so that we could also manage the cost of technology ownership at that point of time. So these are two different acquisitions which were handled differently, and I was lucky in both cases to have management seniors on the user side to actually work together. And sometimes in a multinational, it's not easy to deviate from the global standard, and which helped us do this. So stepping back, whilst I was with Levers and Colgate, I got an opportunity to work with multiple ERP systems, and SAP was just making its foray into India, and uh, I was lucky to be at the right place and became a founder member of SAP's India users group. And one of the takeaways from uh, you know, that foundational setup was to set the country India version. So this was an influencer role which allowed us to work beyond boundaries, and incidentally, that involved players like Colgate, Procter and Gamble, and Levels at a later point of time. And this helped us in making sure that whatever uh, customization was earlier being proposed for the product to different companies in India actually became part of an extended product, became part of a release. So that had an impact on the bottom line of organizations, their IT budgets, because you could actually work together, and it was a very win-win situation, as the landscape of ERP was also getting extended in India through SAP, and it also helped companies to uh, you know give a better bang for the buck to to the finance colleagues in the organization. Then so at the turn of the century, I actually, it had a dual connotation. I was lucky to be part of uh, heading a regional team to do Y2K remediation in Asia Pacific. Now you'll ask, oh, Y2K was a whimper. But at that point of time, 2 years before the D date, everyone was scared. So the amount of program management, the amount of forward thinking and planning for that rollover date was immense. That helped in two ways. It helped to break cultural boundaries when you're working on a regional role. Everybody had a common cause, and I had that experience of understanding the nuances between working in a Vietnam and Thailand versus working in China, and also doing a little bit for our neighbor in Pakistan. So that also brought in a good cultural assimilation of understanding your colleagues both in business and in IT, and it really helps one to become a global citizen, whichever profession you may be in. I would like to take this at that same time when that I had an opportunity when the dot com was its boom at the turn of the century. I was in a multinational job, moved out, invested a little, and thought of doing something on our own. Model was outstanding. It was an application services provider. We were telling all the dot coms that you run your businesses while we take care of the IT for you. And that was for that I worked closely with some partners in the US, because the hosting still happened in the US, and while a lot of development and support work continued 24 by 7 from India through a small team. But maybe sometimes, we all try to time the stock market, some of us, not all. And in this case, I sort of joined at the boom, but I didn't know it was the boom. I thought it was still rising. And then second level funding became a challenge, because .com started sort of going bust. But two mantras I was very clear. One was making sure that I was running a lot of receivables. That means companies were we were providing services and it was pay as you go, but revenue was not coming in. So receivables was there, but money was not coming in. But we held on because customer is king. If the customer fails and we don't take him to the last extent, then you are not there. That was one, and we also made sure that that I was the last one to go off board. That means I left the ship last after outplacing each of our team members when actually we ran into that no-go situation. And it also helped me understand the dignity of labor because one was running, sending your own faxes, receiving your own faxes, doing things which otherwise in any organized setup would leave it for someone else to do those jobs. And whilst on this, looking for this second level funding, I it was Citi offered me that opportunity to extend this entrepreneurial spirit, which is a one of its kind because not too many mm, you know multinationals have this leverage. And I must thank my CEO and the country head at that point of time to when it was trying to set up a business services unit globally. I was allowed to run a small business of its own, and making sure that whatever one was earning from the revenue was brought in back to run the IT for the organization. So, and that worked immensely well. And that's where a little bit of a way of working like an entrepreneur in a huge organization came to the fore, and one was able to transcend from a cost center to a shared services center into a P&L, and which ultimately reached a modest 50 million US dollars, and with the highest voice of customer and operating margin. And and completely uh, business came through networking, business came from word of mouth, and no large scale promotional efforts. And we if everything was equal, we competed with players in the marketplace, and we were serving uh, all the three geographies, and it was purely a 24 by 7 operation. And one more thing which I should point out again as an influencer while uh, doing this role, BPO business was having enough competition in the noughties from Ireland, South Africa, Philippines, because their telecom policies were far relaxed than what it was in India. Some of it has, of course, got completely liberalized over the last couple of decades. But at that point of time, your international business and your domestic business had to be kept separate. And so that there was fear that we would use the links to divert calls. And we worked very closely with the Department of Telecom. I was part of the DOT steering committee representing the industry amongst a few other colleagues, which were actually competition in the marketplace. But we thought it was for a common cause to make India more competitive. And over a period of time, you would have seen that work from home, you're running, providing your business continuity through a third party held facility, and then sort of economizing on a common PBX for both domestic and international calling, albeit with the right controls and right checks and balances, actually made the BPO business at that point of time reach its peak. And of course, it has then gone only forward and forward. So I thought these are some of the examples that are taken from different timelines, which actually gave a lot of variability to the core, IT leadership that one plays in an organization, and is able to bring out both internally and externally value adds, which not only help your organization but also the industry at large.
No, you're right, sir, and you put it in a very summarized manner, in a condensed manner, and of course, the kind of experiences you have had. One of the biggest challenges for most of the emerging CIOs, even in my interaction with them as well, conveying their thoughts effectively to the top management. while also ensuring a strong collaboration with their diverse teams. So it could be any transformation journey, and based on your experiences, whether it was a dot-com boom, financial crisis, or the recent COVID crisis, uh, what are the best practices and recommendations that you maybe do's and don'ts while engaging with the Bancom board and other senior stakeholders, while also ensuring that you collaborate with your teams well, you keep them also in a confidence, and you need to make sure that all the checks and balances of their team's priorities are also met. If you could throw some light, and maybe if you can share some of the examples.
Yeah. So this is actually you have Jatinder, you brought out a very cogent point in what actually makes or breaks IT interventions in an organization. Because apart from it's you know we talk about people, process, and technology.
Right.
So this is actually to do with people, but either peers or levels above, which means that one is your lights out, where really the rest of the organization doesn't bother that yes, you are there and you're doing things as you're expected to do. Only when things fail, people sort of wake up. And of course, COVID period was an example where it was the other way around, that a change was brought in by the IT teams, which were otherwise completely, you know, taken for granted in the past. Uh, so any intervention that you're leading, and it could be, a CIO or one level below a CIO, even two levels, you could be running a project. It is very important to identify your influencers within the organization, and also very cognizant of who the naysayers are. And sometimes it can be from within your team as well. uh, so but for the greater good, one needs to take into account the naysayers point of view. And sometimes people say, "Arey, why are you wasting time?" And but it's important because you need to understand their point of view, and make sure, if you have data points which really address them, not to go into a conflict right then and there, but keep it as part of your arsenal, and work with the influencers, and make sure that you are doing a particular process. I'll give you an example. And I have had some experience with this area in the last 10, 12 years, is on process automation. I never call it robotic process automation because when we started, this term didn't exist. Mm. And it's always the story in an organization that there will be 30 amenable processes, of which 10 uh, could belong to a particular department, or a particular 10, 5, 5, 6, like that. So you have to pick up those five where your stakeholder, or whoever is the joint owner or the sponsor, any of these, four or five processes that's there in the organization, pick that up and make sure you deliver on those processes. And at the same time, keep those naysayers points of view and see whether you have been able to address them in the most positive scenario that you have for yourself. That means you have somebody who's supporting you with a budget, with the people, because in a process automation, you have to depend on the user side to make it happen. It is, and a lot amount of facilitation has to happen, and also work with the junior management team. That's the one who actually goes and sits on the laptop or terminal and makes the processes happen while the automation is on. And if they see that they are able to complete a process with accuracy and in one third or half of the time, and they have time left to do any other value added work, so it's almost like going from booth to booth, if I may use, because this is the season, and if I may use that term, and that would work. So of course, wherever there are interventions which are internal in nature, that means it's purely an IT project. You want to do a huge version upgrade, and you want to make sure that you're in sync, and you are able to give your own team lots of benefits because of the features that come with the new version upgrade. Your user community will not find any value in that. They will think it's okay, it's a version upgrade, like we all do, when as a user, when we use our apps, and hardly any of those benefits that come of a version upgrade actually benefit us. Yes, one or two does. So those are the time where you need to actually work with, if you're one down, then you have to work with your CIO, work with the CFO's team, and for a roadmap, because that's where the money is going to come from, and make sure that you are able to build that strategic roadmap, and see what else you cannot do if you don't move to that point of an upgrade. Cybersecurity, one such example, which earlier one had to run from door to door to get budgets. But obviously, with COVID happening and that becoming, one of the top five in the board's agenda as top five risks, uh, things have become much easier to get to that budget stage. But at the same time, once make sure that since you've got the budget, don't go on that spree of buying products. You have to do a lot of hard work to make sure you're putting to use the product, putting to use the use cases that you have put forward, and make sure that people are trained. And so it's a 360-degree approach in those cases, which will then allow your the people who approve the budget next time to be on your side when they see that, yes, a pure infrastructure leading innovation has really covered the right ground. Other thing, while you're doing this communication, large part of it is non-formal, because you have to sort of collaborate, explain, and of course, a lot of it is also formal. That means you get into meetings, you have a presentation. Uh, my suggestion would be not to go beyond 10 slides, and make sure, because you have audience from a varied background. If you're presenting to a management committee, or if you get a chance to present to the board, you should be doing a little bit of homework to understand where each one of them is coming from. Don't put problems only on those 10 slides, because we are being paid to look at solutions, options, give the options, and give a high level capex, opex impact. And that's the time to also ask for resources which will make that capex or opex work. And not every proposition will stand scrutiny, but yes, there is no other option. Avoid jargon as much as possible. Use benchmarks from what happened around, preferably in your sector within India. If you're a global company, then you need to of course work with your dotted lines across Asia Pacific and the globe. And often for those formal meetings, I had been fortunate where actually we could do off the board prior meetings, and really explain where the pain point is and where I need support from. And in many cases, it worked. So at least you know that there will be one or two people there sitting there who would not, who would take your case on its merit.
No, no, sir, you very well, you explained it so well. And in fact, one of the other things, probably if you can add on, the biggest challenge in this transformative journey for any emerging CIO, or probably IT leaders who are growing in stature, the change management aspect has become really critical. uh, and to deal with it, whether it is the recent COVID times, like you explained it well. So, somebody who has assumed the IT leadership position for the first time, or who is growing in stature, I'm sure he must be dealing with a lot of such challenges. What would be your recommendation to not only deal with situations like these, but also to become an effective change management leader in current scenario where IT is now seen as the foundation for any business?
Okay, I will use the mm, s- you know the other Gurukul project to give some inputs, where people aspire to be CIOs from, either moving from an infrastructure or moving from security or moving from an application background or and because that's the next step. But it is one has to shed a lot of core IT before one is able to plan for this transition. And it is important to be good in your domain of work. So even if you are an infrastructure specialist and you have done that and delivered over the years, you would need to the most logical adjacency. I use the word adjacency for businesses, but here also adjacencies count. Security is a good adjacency for infrastructure, though applications today also need a lot of security, whether it is static or dynamic in the applications that you build in. And at the same time, uh, uh, you must shed some of this, as I said, the core IT piece, and make sure that you are making yourself relevant to at least two or three business units or divisions within your organization. Uh, Otherwise, that seat on the in the table in the management committee, I'm not even mentioning the board, will be at a premium. And so make sure that you don't say that you move into an head IT role and don't become a CIO. CIO is something you have to horizontalize yourself, meaning you need to see the organization a little from the top and see uh, what's the type of information fabric which you have in the organization, how it transcends from one business unit to the other, how the flow of information happens, and whether, like finance, like HR, this also needs to transcend. In doing so, mm, you will have to consciously surround yourself with smarter people. And so you have to hire better than yourself. You have to, while now you have to, when you think of moving upwards, you need to delegate a lot, but at the same time, do not abdicate that role. It's almost like, outsourcing, where we say that even if you outsource, you have to be responsible for that particular business which you have outsourced. So if there's a responsibility which you have delegated, you have to make sure that you're still responsible or accountable for what you have delegated. How to do that? It's not that you keep everything to yourself. Based on the interaction, based on the reviews, you have to make sure that uh, you give a chance for that, the person to come up, give that right amount of empowerment without losing the thread. And if you see that empowerment has actually helped him deliver the results in one, two, and three cases, then that amount of trust builds in. Otherwise, this would lead to mediocrity if you completely abdicate your responsibilities to the next year. And sometimes you would end up being a pressure, a paper pusher. So one of my evolved DRs, I had learned from him, uh, and he used to say that trust in God and rest all his data. And this, of course, applies very mm, correctly in cybersecurity, where we all talk of zero trust today. And so, important thing is, if you think that your next level is not up to the task, then you have to get in, roll up your sleeves, and make sure and don't hit the person, hit the process, saying that these are the things that you didn't sort of address. I want you to make sure that in the next time you come back and do that, so that he also sees that yes, it's part of the professional development he is part of, and at the same time he needs to buck up. We all talk of money, but sometimes, and I have also been guilty of this, we don't value time as a perishable resource. I talked about ice cream a little earlier, but this is something which is which is staring us in the face, which is like the elephant in the room. And there are many times we have the right solutions, and whilst our own way of doing things, sometimes we delay our implementation, and then the whole point of bringing that solution to make a difference to the business gets lost. So value time as a perishable resource. uh, almost all times formal authority will be given, and almost all times. So, but I have seen instances where it's not there, and it's really difficult to navigate that piece. But it also means that you also have to be working around that formal authority, and to make yourself meaningful to the rest of the organization. Um, Keep yourself updated um, in areas where you are falling short. So you have to do a lot of introspection in rising to the next level, because you should not be shortchanged. And today, the user community is it's assumed that they know as much as you do, because everything is now so open. So you have to be not only know what the technology brings to you, but at the same time make sure that how it is to be applied within your organization. Allow, and this is for even CIOs, colleagues, because I have faced it often. Uh, Allow shadow IT to also be there, be their partner, and make sure that at certain points of time that becomes part of your enterprise architecture. And this is where you have to move from the uh, you know uh, that naysayer into an influencer, saying that yes, you want to make his project succeed, and he feels that IT may be slow enough not to deliver. So take those inputs, and you have to do that extra mile to make sure that his particular POC works. And then you tell him that to run it at an enterprise level, for you to succeed, it has to actually fall in line with the security practices, our standards, and we'll make sure that it's implemented at an enterprise level. But uh, shadow IT is something which is a reality, and you shouldn't back away from it.
Yeah,
Um, and
absolutely.
work with startups, mentor startups, mentor fresh minds. Um, it's not necessary that it's only seniors need to be part of a team. It's always a mix. So in most of the user-driven projects, you would have experienced guys who actually tell you how this was running, how it was, from the process document, which three steps are actually written at a very high level, but go down to the details. They are the persons who help you, and you have your fresh minds to make sure that the recent tooling that you have in place is actually working. So, um I'll maybe come to one or two examples a little later. And also, sometimes you must mend your borders. You may have a conflict and it ends up in a sour note. You have to take that opportunity to break the barrier. And I often use this quote from Rahim: कि टूटे सुजन मनाइए जो टूटे सौ बार, रहीमन फिर पोइए टूटे मुख्तार. So that is something which it also helps you manage your ego. That that's an important piece in what we do. Another important thing is IT and OT. In the cybersecurity world, you have found that OT is an area where is equally or more important, because those are the crown jewels. And the nature of assets in IT and OT are completely different. Uh, IT has a faster turnaround time of being replaced. OT is something which is your liveware, you can't replace. If things are working, don't touch it. In this scenario, running a cybersecurity program, you have to be more like a facilitator and play an underdog to your OT colleagues. Let them run the process. You bring in the checks and balances, because ultimately every uh, violation or every compromise that happens is actual an IT compromise, even in the OT world, because it's ultimately an OT device, an IP device that works even in the OT space.
Yeah. So we have few questions. I mean, you very rightly said building trust is extremely critical, and helping others also achieve their milestones is extremely critical for any leader. And of course, learning is another critical area. We have got some questions from our audience. Mr. Vikas Srivastava, while his first question you have already explained tips to the first time CIOs in their early days. Maybe if you would like to throw some more light. The other question Vikas has asked that CIO role is slowly changing and replaced by CDO. What do you recommend for readiness?
Okay, yeah, this is one important thing that uh, CDOs, CDOs, they're organizations, at when it happened about say 5 6 years back, it was uh, seen that yes, we already have the complexity of a CIO, CTO, and then now the CDO also is another nomenclature which is got added. That is another form of maturity that a CIO goes through. A CDO role is actually brings you much closer to business, and you need to make sure that whatever uh, digital intervention, forget about the whether it's CDO, CIO, or CTO, whatever digital intervention that you're bringing onto the table, it should at least hit one of these drivers, meaning improve customer experience, increase your revenue, or bring in a completely different chain of revenue. It may be a very small percentage. And fourth is, of course, reduce cost. So between the four, at least one of them must be very significantly affected, and then it could also touch on the other side of it could be a customer experience, or it could be even an employee experience. Now, when you look at these projects, CDO would probably come in where it's looking at a business, a revenue enhancement role. A new line of business wants to be is intended to be set up, and they don't want to disturb the legacy IT organization, which may be doing well. And so this, of course, that gentleman will not be able to do much without taking help from the core IT. So these two gentlemen need to work very closely together. And typically, the maturity of a CDO would be once he delivers, brings that unit in place and runs it for a period of a year or 1.5 years, and it could be more than one intervention. He's often seen to move to a business unit role because he has worked more on the enhancing the top line, and of course at the same which obviously helped also in managing the bottom line. So in whatever you do as a CIO or CDO, some of your interventions should look at, is there a way I can work with the business unit to change the model? So there are examples where compressor companies have moved into a role where the client is now paying not for the compressor as an asset, but for the benefit that it is bringing on a pay as you go. And you are bringing in that IoT intervention by able to managing that asset remotely, and so your the compressor company no more is only selling assets and AMC, but it is selling the compressor as a service. And so this is where, which typically if, you would have your information systems managing that part of that asset as part of any other asset in the organization, but when you transcend into this role, you thoda hatke you have to work, and that is where sometimes you see a CDO coming in where the maybe the CEO of the organization feels that there is some white space that can be addressed by focusing more, and at a different point of time that system also has to then be part of your whatever information systems ERP that you're running today. And for example, mm, today's world, new things have come up. The DPDP Act, which was earlier the personal data protection, which now become digital data protection privacy act, and your ESG demands. So these are also not part of the typical CIO syllabus, but one has to really look at those white spaces. Otherwise, tomorrow a chief data officer might come into place, another CDO. So you have to really anticipate what is being expected in this, because these ESG and DPDP actually hit the organization's highest levels. And you need to do some homework to see how I can be prepared to address these areas. For instance, there are lots of And I'll go a little bit in the on the technical side. There will be lots of data on emission. There's lots of data on how you're managing your suppliers, which typically may not be part of your enterprise system. And there will be a lot of pollution data which you're running, which needs to be then fed in, and also a lot of CSR that is happening. This typically would not ideally fall in the core enterprise system. But it doesn't mean that you go whole hog and try to bring these systems into your ERP, because then building these systems, which are uh, often seen as peripheral normally, will eat up your resources, eat up your capex, and that means will become the end, and the end of getting a right materiality index on your ESG scorecard will then lag. So you have to see how you can um, build interfaces, because most of them are API consumable today. Most of the players who are consulting on this ESG space are actually bringing in tools, and you use your own mix of ETL tools to get this data. Don't go for full scale development, but go through the interface integration route into your core system, and give it a year and year and a half, 2 years time, by which the company has improved its ESG posture, and then you can look for that. Not all of them, in some of them over a period of time, to bring into the core, IT architecture.
Yeah. So we have another question from Mr. Abhijit Chakraborty. His question is, in your opinion, how much of a functional competency versus leadership qualities are important for a CIO role, and where should we draw the line?
First of all, there is no line. It's very amorphous. But obviously, your functional competency, which I mentioned a little earlier, you have to you have to shed this consciously, uh, but you have to do the hard work to be relevant, because you would need to know what your next line is doing. And for that, you must be cognizant of where this technology is taken on into. So, for instance, I sometimes back I mentioned application security is also equally important as infrastructure security. Earlier, people used to move from infrastructure to security roles, and actually, even today, there is a big gap in organizations where security is seen as an appendage. It's an independent function, away from applications and away from infrastructure. But when you're developing applications today, we often must have heard the word security by design. That's where the whole concept of DevSecOps come in. As a new way of doing things. That means you shift left in the entire development cycle. Make sure that you address things right in the beginning, and for that, you don't need to be holding on to getting into a GitHub or doing a GitLab implementation. But you must be aware of the process that goes in, and make sure that your team is also aware that and the team is the right people are in place. That's where I said hire smarter people who are able to deliver. But your job is to say that, yes, this is where, in a longer scheme of things, in the organization's compass, your cybersecurity posture will improve over the next 12 months if we adopt this DevSecOps. And that's where the leadership quality, abstracting away from the technical into a presentation which is not more than 10 slides to a to your management team, will help in getting running this exercise, from a resource perspective, financial resource perspective as well.
Yeah. So you talked about all these essential ingredients of success and essential ingredients of leadership. But based on your experience, Sanjay ji, what are probably one or two traits that you probably would like to highlight that may derail the career of leaders in their journey, or create a setback, or I would not say setback, but may cause more challenges, especially in terms of people management, and like you said, the transition to the next level.
There are two things that I would want to
Yeah.
It's a self professional development trait. Build your own moral compass.
Mhm.
I use this term very often. It's very difficult to build. And how does the compass work? Because obviously it depends on its magnetic field. And that's where your compass may get derailed by your life's magnet very often. And what are some of those things? You also need to understand where you can where you need to back out. So in our mythology we speak of, one of the names for Krishna is Ranchod. So he backed out at critical points where people thought that he had actually fled the field, but it's to come back with a lot more reckoning and making sure that you are able to address those gaps and bring it to the fore. So two things happen. You don't back out, you stay put, use resources to make that thing happen at that point of time, where just putting resources may not help, and it leads to abject failure, and you're holding on to something which actually could have used it elsewhere. So there could be, so this, the word, this thought of ranchod, it maybe once in 10 it happens, also maps with your fail fast attitude. So in any digital intervention project, you must know when it is not working. Sometimes POCs may be very successful, but it may not actually lead to a deployment. In one case, a POC was successful and we were about to go in, but we realized that it was a startup and that startup was getting acquired, and therefore it may not have the wherewithal to manage a large scale enterprise wide implementation, though the POC was appreciated both from users as well as from the IT community. And therefore so those are of course, it comes with experience. One thing is which you need to, the second thing that I want to say is, as part of the moral compass, is do what is fair for the organization. Sometimes we only work for our bosses. I know I'm making a very controversial statement because bosses reflect the organization, but many a time it may happen that that two do not map. So that comes with maturity and it comes with a very conscious conversation. So the thing is, whatever you're doing, would you let that happen to you? The same whatever behavior, action, would that same thing be meted out to you and you would say, yeah, I am hunky dory? So that is very important. And the along with that, don't let your self belief go into overconfidence. So we are the best, everybody else is all riffraff, and that would actually lead to, I've seen cases where it just, you want to hear whatever you want to hear. You don't want to hear any dissent, any a point of view, because all of us are being paid to get our experiences from different folds, and not all of them will actually ultimately end up uh, that point of view being implemented. But you must listen to it, and if required, change your stance. 2 times out of 10. And if that you don't do, and you only want to hear what you want to hear, that might lead to that, along with ego, actually leads to a lot of disaster.
No, those
So,
are
I
well
didn't want.
said. Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Please carry on, sir.
so so this was a little bit on the, what we need to guard ourselves against, and that is also equally important. And you should accept team failures. There's another thing where teams don't want to fail. So this fail fast and team failures, it should be part of your, when you're doing new projects, the team should know that yes, they have given their best, and you have to be very clear in your that reviews where I talked about. You must know what is being done without getting into the details, and if you see that there has been intent, and then sometimes again two out of 10 such new projects do fail, and but that gives in a lot of learning, and then you have to then hold the team together and bring it. It is not possible again to do a please everybody. That's also very important. You can't please everybody in the organization. So you would have heard of Sarvajan Sukhai, Bahujan Sukhai, and Alpajan Sukhai. So it means you can't please everybody. Don't go through that Sarvajan route. Go through the Bahujan Sukhai route. That means I'm not these words have been also propounded by Buddha, uh, Swami Vivekananda, and even medieval poets, that and obviously move away from Swanta Sukhai. That is being selfish. Uh, it actually merits that you need to carry your team along, guide them while they are in the room for not having delivered. But outside, you have to be the backbone on which they are standing. And that will help you to, when you are actually in some fix, for them to deliver for you when the time comes.
Thank you very much, sir. And one point which probably you rightly said, you need to hire smarter people than you. And a lot of us, a lot of leaders, especially in our earlier career, we sometimes find it very difficult to deal with people who are smarter than us. And this is a fact. I mean, I've been hearing such things from a lot of, and because managing them sometimes becomes a little tricky. And while they can be of great value, but sometimes dealing with them and managing them and having them on board with all the ideas, it becomes very challenging for all of the new leaders. So I think that's basically a very you put it in a very effective manner.
You, Jatinder, you brought in a very good point.
Yeah,
If that happens, if you on attitude, you have to weed out,
yeah,
because it will spoil the whole bucket.
yeah,
That is a given, and you have to give it a lot of chance. You have to do that mentorship, because sometimes individual contributors need a lot of mentorship
yeah.
also. So because they need the right environment to succeed. But if somebody tries to bring in a caste system within the IT team or in the digital team, then you have to weed that out.
No, thank you very much, sir. In the interest of time, I think we run out of time, and thank you very much for sharing some great insights over leadership and navigating the career of a CIO, and based on your experiences and sharing some wonderful insights with our audience. I'm sure the session would be of great help. We look forward to have your feedback. The Google form is shared for your reference, and thank you very much for joining in today. Sanjay, thank you very much once again for being with us and sharing some great perspectives. We look forward to host you once again to all our audience and to you, Sanjay as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, and I hope this whatever these are not everything is have to be repeated and right,
Yeah,
but these are experiences which help you build the guardrails as you go forward. Thank you,
absolutely.
Jatinder, and thank you
Absolutely.
to CIO and leader.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.